The human body in Sympoiesis with nature and cosmos towards an emergent ontogenesis with the cosmos. So even just in the time I wrote this dissertation in 2016, things have accelerated so much. The thing we are becoming is latent in origin. That's from Jean Gebser. Yet we have disrupted the terrain so much that we are becoming something else. We have already become something else. That's the post-human. Our human ontology has become fragmented, digitalized. I'm just going to move this up a little bit. There we go. Sanitized. We have become flat representations of ourselves, very linear. We have a body-mind split, and we have externalized our evolution into the machine. Our evolutionary relationship with the earth has been erased. We need a process of becoming that is restorative, radically embodied, and ethical to our ontological core. Okay, I'm wondering why this. With the threat of climate collapse, the pressures of interdependent becoming are so much greater that we need to superposition the human body within nature and cosmos. So this idea of superposition is like radically weave ourselves back into nature and cosmos. We've become fragmented, and we are developing apart from other species and the earth itself. And our body is a self-constituting system, and we can't really talk about the human body unless we talk about the environment. It's an autonomous, self-constituting system, which means that it is always self-referencing the environment in order to make itself. And not only that, but because of entropy, we have to not only self-reference, but include and transcend. So embodiment is remedial as well as generative. So when we're talking about the human body in Sympoiesis with nature and cosmos, we're talking about one self-constituting matrix of Sympoiesis in another matrix of Sympoiesis. Self-constituting systems are complementary, just like the body and nature and cosmos. There's an identity with the whole. Sympoietic systems, self-constituting systems open the door to a number of different causal processes at once: molecular, genetic, biological, ecological, developmental, ecological, symbiosis, and sympoiesis. And the other thing, the intention of superpositioning the body in nature and cosmos is really about becoming coherent and aligning with evolutionary wills and forces. It seems we have become we've become separate from, and this separate has become internalized into the very tissues of our body. So we have to kind of almost exfoliate or the concretized separation and actually begin to reintegrate the disparate parts. So, and of course, sympoietic systems open the door to emergent properties. Throughout history, humans have always placed themselves at the center of co-creativity with the universe. Various cultures and lineages, all the way back through history, have developed different modes of becoming based upon different systems such as the chakras, subtle energy flows, Kundalini, prana. We know a lot of these systems. Yoga is one of them. Tai Chi, Qigong. So this is not anything new, this idea of placing ourselves within the universe for co-creation. What's different now is the pressures for inter-becoming. So these ancient systems of movement and becoming were based on not really, they were more concerned with the self-actualization of the human and spiritual progress. And so now it's almost like we've just listened to, the previous speaker talk about how our ontology has become so atrophied, and we are going to be facing these pandemics ongoing. And, we need to really bolster our complexity as a biological organism, or we're just these other viruses are going to they're going to mutate much faster, and their evolution will exceed our capacity to even keep up with the demand for complexity. So to create a framework for inter-becoming, I turn to Sympoiesis. Sympoiesis means making with. Donna Haraway wrote a wonderful book called Staying with the Trouble. And basically the book is about how we can continue to complexify as the planet comes apart. So Sympoietic systems, or Sympoiesis, refers to the way in which biological, ecological, and evolutionary processes interact with each other in nonlinear ways to create complex life. Sympoietic systems are evolutionary because they are always building upon the possible web of relations that can be realized. This is similar to a concept of endosymbiosis or DNA recombination, which is now recognized as an important source of synergistic function in the global trading and exchange of genes. I mean, one thing we know about viruses is how fast they mutate, and not only mutate, but they share genes, they share nucleotides, they share a lot of different processes between them. And so this aids in their ability to mutate rapidly. The body is also a symbiotic system. It's comprised of molecules, cells, microbes. In fact, we have 10 to 1 microbes in our body. That means for every human cell, we have, actually it's 100 microbes, cells, microbial cells. Human DNA, we have microbial DNA, we have 150% more microbial DNA than actual human DNA. We have 78 organs and 11 systems. So it's a very complex system that's self-constituting based upon cell division, biogenesis, symbiogenesis, and cosmogenesis. In fact, we can now trace all life back to one ancestor called Luca, which was a bacteria, a salt bacteria that lived 4 billion years ago. So we embody the history of all development and evolution, as well as all the experience gained in development and evolution. So that's a lot of complexity within our biological tissue that we are walking around with all the time. But as I said previously in the slide that showed our bodies in postures at computers, we're really only utilizing very little of our biological complexity. Self-constituting systems, which the body is dependent upon a fluid or a porous environment for the vast flow of information to be distributed across many layers of biological and ecological organization at once. So basically what I'm saying here is that the body is 70% water, each cell is 70% water, and that water is crucial for the bidirectional flow of information into the cell and out of the cell. And of course, the DNA molecule is within the cell. So all of this information that's coming from within the body and outside the body from environmental influence is coming and is signaling and communicating in through the water. So the state of this water is crucial. The structure, the state. And so when we live in compressed postures and habitual postures of, technological modernity, a lot of our fluid within our cells and within our extracellular matrix gets compressed. And when it's compressed, it congeals. It's not like, the blood, which has a heart to pump it around. The fluid within our bodies, within the cells, within the extracellular matrix that bathes all of the communication and signaling. Most of the flow and the direction of the flow comes from how we move our bodies. That's why movement was done for spiritual realization, because it activates the channels and it activates the different channels and prana. So when we move our bodies, we're not just moving energy, we're actually moving fluid, both vascular, lymphatic. We're moving cells. Each cell has a cytoskeleton, which is responsible for all of the communication in the cell, and it responds to movement. So each cell has a cytoskeleton. So the body the idea that the body being a self-constituting system, the flow of water within the body, within the cells, is crucial to maintain a porous environment for the bidirectional flow. And what's really interesting about self-reconstituting systems is that they're self-referencing all the time. So that means the body knows itself by folding back on itself. If it's not folding back on itself, it's not self-referencing. So for the body, that's not really coming into consciousness. I mean, I think it's really interesting that we as humans are the only species that have the capacity for disembodied reason. This means the thinking mind can be cut off from any kind of feedback from the body, and feedback in the form of feelings and passion. And this is some of the things the person before me spoke about. How do we get people to feel the urgency of, where we're at in our evolution and in our civilization right now, and how we can make real change. It seems like we're still going around sort of, robotic and sort of in these rote patterns without really, feeling the urgency, although it's changing and it's changing fast, and people are beginning to realize that, wow, we are really in a pickle now, for sure, a bottleneck in our evolution. So self-referencing is really important for the body to reiterate all of the stratifications, of complexity and consciousness that are necessary for the body to maintain itself over and over. So if the body's not self-referencing a lot of complex information, a lot of complex information isn't being constituted. Self-referencing and self-constituting systems can be driven by bodily movement in many planes, parts, and dimensions. And that's where my work comes in. I've been developing movement for creating multidimensional movement to drive the different complexity within cells, outside of cells, within the matrix, the sort of throughout the matrix of the body. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Due to the repetitive and habitual nature of modern technological society, we become linear and flattened representations of ourselves. So we have kind of concretized into this kind of flat, linear. And you can see the picture below. This is an example of developmental movement we see in children, movement we see in children as they are learning to inhabit their body from, rolling and then eventually kneeling to standing up and eventually walking. So all of the dimensions are being referenced in this developmental movement. So we could say, well, we have these dimensions. Is acknowledging them enough? No, because the body is a self-referencing, self-constituting system, we actually have to develop them. And the developing of them means the self-referencing and the self-constituting. And this means focusing on an inward, a sense of self-reflexivity in the body, which is the ability to perceive and feel oneself as a three-dimensional body in all planes. So not just a linear frontal, but this sagittal plane, coronal plane, transversal plane on the side, and also we can see, oops, how did they go? There. So, sorry about that. So when I say a body in three dimensions, it's body utilizing all of the planes and parts of ourselves that we don't use when we're sitting in prolonged postures. So for example, this is a chair here, and this is me moving on the chair. So in this posture, I am decompressing the spine, which gets so compressed when we're in sitting positions. Just checking the time here, okay, making sure I'm on time. And
about
so there's
2 minutes left.
Okay, I better just speed up here a little bit. Movement opens up areas of compression and allows new orders of information to arise and be seated within one another. It can be likened to a process of self-ontogenesis. So we're self-referencing complex interactions and relationships and opening up new relationships to the whole. So folding the ontological body into nature and cosmos, we create a manifold. It's a whole that can never be superseded. I like to use the word superfold. The body is a superfold. When we are self-referencing and self-constituting all the different dimensions of the body, all the different planes of the body, this is what is happening. It's like these vast interconnections of information are going in all dimensions. And not only that, but this all of the information of evolution and development are in this as well. So that this superfold is saturated with potentials to bring forth new potencies beyond the body's cognizance. When Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari write the chapter, How to Build Oneself a Body Without Organs in 1,000 Plateaus, it's this kind of subjective technology that I believe they're referring to. Because when we actually drive our own modes of becoming and flights of information and vectors into other planes and dimensions, we're adding a whole other ontological complement to the already self-referencing and self-constituting body. So we get a body without organs. We have a body that we have no idea of what is even capable of.
I think we're out of time.
That's okay. I'm at the.
You have a 30-second wrap that you want to do very, very quickly?
Well, just in summary, I guess the body in Sympoiesis with nature and cosmos were self-referencing an identity of the parts, but also an identity with the whole. And we're also creating porous boundary edges. And these are the edges that are the making with, that are the sort of still yet to be constituted, and the novel places, the emergent places. And new ontologies emerge through the practice of synergizing different causal processes. And yeah, we're also rendering ourselves open and pliable to the evolutionary forces and wills. And we become a subjective agent and participator in our own transformation, our own transmutation, and our own transfiguration. So when I talked earlier about, this, that our ontology had become fragmented, we actually need to create interactions between all of the parts so that we operate as a whole organism.